We will get started then. All right. So what is statistics all about? Okay. Statistics. Statistics. And you can have all sorts of I guess descriptions or definitions of what statistics is about. I kind of settle on this generic, but I think a pretty decent explanation. Okay, it's all about taking, collecting and analyzing data. So that we can draw meaningful conclusions or meaningful information from it. You guys can all read my writing, okay? And yeah, so a lot of statistics focuses on, what is data, how we're going to gather data. There's actually entire courses devoted just to collecting data, okay? On designing experiments in a proper fashion, or going out and collecting surveys in a proper manner. So there's a lot going into collecting data, and then but a lot of this course will be into the analyzing data and drawing meaningful conclusions from it. Okay, and so let's just think of So let's think back to like when we were in elementary school and or even junior high, and you had like a science fair, and you did some kind of experiment, okay? And what kind of conclusion might you draw from the science fair? And so. Did anyone do a proper experiment for their their science fair from elementary school? Yeah. Okay. What did you do?
It was about like going around to different people and tasting on the taste buds which part of the tongue is sweet, sour, all the different.
Oh, okay. Okay. So you went to different people and you had them taste. What part of the tongue detected sour or sweet or salty or something. Okay, so maybe I'll take that, and I'm just going to simplify maybe the data you collected. Okay, and actually to do a proper experiment that way maybe it's difficult, but maybe we divided the tongue into, I don't know. What did you do? Maybe the center versus the rim, or?
Yeah, I think we did fours. The outside versus the inside, and the front versus the back.
Oh, okay. So we'll say the outside versus the inside. Let's just say this is the tongue, and we have the outside versus the inside, and maybe we ask drop something sweet, and we ask was it sweeter on the outside, or was it sweeter on the inside, or something? Okay, or was the intensity greater on the when we put the sweetness on the outside or the sweetness on the inside? Okay, so we'll how would we have gathered the data? Okay, so we say person 1, and we put something sweet on the outside versus sweet on the inside, okay? And we just ask, where did it taste stronger? Okay, and so person 1 says it tasted stronger on the outside, and person 2 says the sweetness tasted stronger on the inside. inside or something like this. Okay, so this is we're I don't, does this make sense? The data I'm collecting. So we're going through. I don't know. Maybe we were in in 5th grade. Maybe we were only able to survey like 20 people or something. Okay, and we give some people sugar and we put it on both parts and we say, where did it taste stronger? And some say it tasted on the outside or tasted stronger on the inside. Maybe some says I'm not sure or something like that. Okay, so we someone says maybe equal. Both are equal, and then and go on. Okay, so. And person 20 at the end says, you know, maybe it tasted stronger. Oh, I'm so sorry. Can I ask you actually to sit? Yeah, not in that seat, but that seat's perfectly fine. I just these two right there end up in the field of view of the camera there. So. Okay, so and so maybe at the end you tally them up, and you say outside versus inside, and then not sure. Or equal. Okay, and we had a total of 20 people, and maybe it says 12 on the outside, and 6 said it was sweeter on the inside, and not sure there were 2 people who were not sure. Okay, and so maybe at the end of this, as a 5th grader, you would say, oh well, it seems that that the outside of the tongue is better at detecting sweet things. Okay, and so in 5th grade or whatever grade, you'd say, oh, okay, well 12 was the biggest number, so outside seems better at detecting sweetness. Alright, and if you were a 5th grade teacher and you saw a student do this, what would you say? You'd give the student what grade? Yeah, you'd say, oh, great, you did it, you know. Yeah, they're supposed to have the scientific method, right? Form a hypothesis and figure out how to run an experiment, and they run the experiment, they collected the data, they do an analysis. They come to a conclusion. The outside of the tongue is better at detecting sweet things than the inside. So 12 out of 20. Sure, that sounds good. Okay. But we're not in 5th grade anymore, and so what would you say now? This is it's inconclusive. Okay, now why would you say inconclusive? It seems, you know, twice as many, 12 versus 6, twice as many people said it was sweeter on the outside than it was on the inside of the tongue. Or would you say, oh yeah, you know, what we did in 5th grade, it's still good. The outside of the tongue is better than the inside.
Too small of a sample?
Too small of a sample? Okay, so only you say, all right, maybe too small. So why is 20 too small of a sample? At what point would you say, if I surveyed 30, would you say that was enough? If I surveyed 200, would that be enough? Maybe, I don't know. You know, I really don't know. Okay. So there's something in our mind that says, okay, maybe this is too small. Maybe this sample is too small. Maybe if we asked more people, the numbers would be different. Okay, so what statistics will help us do, it will help us come to some kind of conclusion about this. And it will also help us decide, you know, what sample size do we need? At what point is our data good enough for us to say, yes, the conclusion we made is good, versus our conclusion, or it's still inconclusive. The data is inconclusive. Okay, so statistics. Versus when still inconclusive. And you know, a lot of people, maybe they're not doing 5th grade science experiments where they're putting sugar on someone's tongue, but they're doing things more complicated, using chemicals and maybe lab rats or different things. And so maybe the methods that they are doing are more complicated. But a lot of times, the analysis that they do when they get the data is still done at a very elementary level. Okay, and so here's an example. In this experiment, researchers were curious if exposing mice to bacteria, specifically E. coli bacteria, if that increased the rate at which mice developed liver tumors. Okay, and so they did an experiment. They had a control group that was not exposed to bacteria, and then they had mice that were exposed to bacteria, and they had them live there. And then at the end, they killed all the mice, and they cut them open, and they looked at the livers and said, these mice had tumors, and these mice did not have tumors. Okay, so. It's a little grim for the mice, but I guess that's in the name of science. So, and this is the data that they collected. Okay, so we had 2 treatments. We had the mice who were exposed to E. coli, and then we had the mice in the germ-free or control environment. And then we looked at mice who developed liver tumors. Versus those who did not have no liver tumors. And we did this to a total of 52 mice. 13 mice were exposed to E. coli, and 49 mice were exposed to lived in the germ-free environment. Okay. And so what if someone says, does E. coli increase the rate of liver tumors? How would you even begin to answer that question? What should you find first?
Percentage of the totals?
Okay, percentage. Okay, so what percentage is what I find here?
8 out of 13.
Okay, so 8 out of 13. This is a percentage of E. coli mice with liver tumors. Alright, so that's 8 over 13, which is equal to 62%. And I would compare this percentage to what?
The percentage between germ-free, so
19 over 49.
Oh, yeah.
19 over 49. Okay, so percentage of the germ-free mice with liver tumors. Which would be 19 over 49, and that equals 39%. So, what would you say? Does exposing mice to E. coli, does our data show that exposing mice to E. coli increase the risk of developing liver tumors?
Yes,
Yes. Okay, and we say yes because 62% is bigger than 39% or something like that, okay? So, so our, I guess our first glance conclusion, okay, so we might say 62% is larger than 49%, so that shows us
49 or 39?
I'm sorry, 39%. So that indicates E. coli increases liver tumors. And then I would argue, from a statistics point of view, I would say, you know what? Our samples might not be big enough, okay? We actually only had 13 mice in the E. coli group. And so this number 62%, it could be large or small. We're not entirely sure. 62% is bigger than 39%, but if we do the statistical analysis to this data set, we'll see that it's actually that this difference, the difference between 62% and 39%, is actually not a significant difference. Okay, and so we will learn. There's different analysis tools that we will learn for this data, and so when we apply statistics, we will see that this difference between 62% and 39% is actually not a significant difference. Okay. Alright, but we apply statistical tools, statistical tests. It's not significant. Okay, at least for our data, at least for this set of data. In other sets of data, smaller percentage differences are actually significant because you've collected a much larger sample. So, so from here, this data we would still say is inconclusive towards answering our question of does bacteria, does the exposure to E. coli increase the risk of liver tumors? Okay, so statistics would say inconclusive. Okay, and probably what you will see in this class is that a lot of results from data that is collected is indeed inconclusive. Okay, and that's I guess when you're doing research and things like that, it's always not exciting to get an inconclusive result, but sometimes that's important because sometimes that means where you thought there might have been a relationship, we don't have evidence that there is a relationship. Okay? At the same time, lack of evidence doesn't mean evidence that it is missing, but just we don't have evidence for such a thing. Okay?
One
And-
question.
yes.
But if we have the same amount of germ-free and exposed, so if it would be 49 from each side, would be it more significant data?
You know, it's not so much that they were of different size, but the size of themselves. Okay, so 49 and 49. If you had 49 and 49, I'm not entirely sure off the top of my head. I would have to actually do the test. But if you had 49 in both groups and you still had a difference of 62% versus 39%, probably it would be a significant difference. I would have to do the math to figure that out. But when you only have 13, it's not enough. So probably even if it was like 20 and 20, it'd probably not be enough data. So it all depends on the data that you've collected. Okay. And so but collecting data can be difficult and challenging and expensive, and probably what you'll see as this course goes on is that it's, collecting more data is better. Okay, it's better to have more data, even if it's expensive to gather more data. And so when you read this first chapter in the book, so on the homework pages, I have to talk a little bit about our homework page. I've assigned reading from the book, and so this first section, it just talks about, it just gives a glimpse as to where the different types of studies that this book will cover. It'll give you a glimpse into what kinds of analysis can be done with statistics, and it goes from there. Okay, and then this next section, it just talks about observational studies versus experiments, and we're going to just spend maybe half an hour max on this part. Okay, but I don't want this, but this is actually a very important difference, and you can take an entire course dedicated just to this topic here, where we're just getting like a 30-minute, just quick glimpse of the topic here. Okay, and the implications of this are very important. So I'm just going to just briefly go through them, and it might seem like it's not a huge deal, but don't underestimate this stuff. Okay, so a lot of times when we gather data, we can gather data from observational studies or experiments. That's kind of simplifying the whole world into just two things, but it works here. Okay, so gather data. And the key difference is that in observational studies, we just observe. We're not interfering with people's lives. We're doing our best actually to not interfere, and we're just observing what happens. And a lot of energy in observational studies are spent. A lot of energy is spent to making sure that the people you're studying are representative of the population in general. Okay? So a lot of energy. I guess this area of study, so a lot of studies have been done in trying to see how we should select subjects. That's known as sampling. Okay? Sampling methodology. So, if you're ever in market research or things like this, you'll hear of like Nielsen ratings or just Pew Research and things like this. And they go out and they call people and they ask, you know, can we have a few minutes of your time? And what movies have you seen in the last few months? Or what, you know, did you sign up for a new cell phone plan or this and that? They ask all these questions, okay? And what they're hoping is that the answers that they get from the people that they've called and things like that, that's an indication of the consumers in general, okay? So if they wanted to get an accurate picture of the United States, they wouldn't just call, you know, hipsters in San Francisco or something and just get their opinion, because then they might come to the incorrect conclusion that the only cell phone in use is an iPhone and things like that. Okay, these are just so they're hoping that when they make all of these calls and they're selecting people for study, that they're getting a general, I guess a general picture of the United States or whatever it is that they're looking for, and not just a small select group, unless I guess their target demographic is only a small group, then they would want to make sure that they have the right opinions. Okay, so anyway, sampling methodology, a lot of energy is spent in just making sure that the people they select are representative. Okay, around this time of year, or actually this whole year, we've been seeing a lot of political stuff. Okay, about the upcoming election, and all these different organizations are going out and asking surveys. You know, who are you going to vote for? And in order to kind of predict what's going to happen in the general election, when they survey people, they're not going to be asking only people in California or only people in Texas or things like that. They're hoping to get a general, asking people around the entire country, or you know, if they're interested, you know, in the results of the Electoral College, then they ask state by state. But they're not just asking, you know, large cities or only rural areas or things like that. They're trying to get a good representation of the population that they're after. Okay. So that's so we've got observational studies and things like this. So a lot of energy is spent on that. On the other hand, we have experiments, and in an experiment we do as much interfering as we possibly can. Experiments, on the other hand, the researchers interfere with the subject's lives. Okay. The researchers assign treatments, meaning they tell this group, you are going to receive, you know, this drug, and this group's going to receive the placebo, or they make that decision. The people, the subjects don't get to choose. Okay. The researchers, a lot of times, and in good experiments, they should, they also try to control other factors that that they're not interested in, or they just try to control other factors other than the treatment, okay? And the reason why they try to control these other factors is so that the two or whatever the people that they are studying, let's say one group receives an actual drug that's being tested, and the other group receives a placebo that's not supposed to have any effect. So we've got two groups, one receiving the treatment, or one receiving the drug, and one receiving the placebo. They would try to control everything so that the two groups, the conditions that they're living or whatever, are as similar as possible, so that if they discover any kind of difference between the groups at the end of the experiment, that difference can only be attributed to the fact that one received the drug and the other received the placebo. Okay, if they're giving this group the drug and this group gets the placebo, but it also turns out that everybody in this group is smoking and this group is not smoking or something. Okay, when they make findings at the end of the study, they won't know if the differences are because the drug is working or if it's a result of people smoking. There's more people smoking in this group than in this group, or things like that. So they try to control other factors so that difference is found between what we call treatment groups. Can be attributed to the treatment. So one of the main consequences of this is that from an experiment, if it's a well-designed and well-done experiment, we can draw cause and effect conclusions from the experiment. In an observational study, no matter how good it is, we cannot make cause and effect conclusions. We generally cannot make I have to qualify it with generally, because it is possible to jump through a series of hoops where you can make the argument that although it wasn't an experiment, because of all of these other things that are happening, it's reasonable to make a cause and effect conclusion. Okay? But this is actually the argument that tobacco companies used for a very long time, and they said because, well, it's not ethical to do a smoking experiment, okay? Because to do a true smoking experiment, it means what we would have to do is we say, okay, we need 100 volunteers, and then we flip coins or something, and we say, all right, for those of you where the coin landed heads, you're going to be in this group, and those of you who landed tails, you're in this group, and you, 50 of you or whatever, you're going to start smoking a pack of cigarettes right now, and you guys, you are not supposed to touch cigarettes at all, okay? And we can't do that, all right? That's it's just not ethical. So, nobody ever has done a smoking experiment like that. And so all we could do were perform observational studies, and we could just look at people and we'd say, all right, well, these people never smoked, and their rate of lung cancer is very low. And these people were heavy smokers, and their rate of lung cancer is much higher. Okay? And then the cigarette companies would say, well, that might be true, the data shows that, but it doesn't mean that smoking causes or causes lung cancer. For all we know is that these people were genetically predisposed to lung conditions, and they smoked because of this predisposition. They actually find the cigarette smoke to be soothing to their lungs, or whatever it is. They make up these things, and we didn't really have an argument against that, okay? Because I can give you examples of silly observational studies where it might seem like there's a cause and effect relationship, but you cannot prove that a cause and effect relationship exists. Okay? And so it was only through just a bunch of hoops. They did observational studies where they gathered twins, and they found one twin smoked and the other twin didn't, so that kind of eliminates the genetic bias and things like that. Kind of finally admitted that smoking causes lung cancer, but it's a lot more difficult to make that kind of cause and effect conclusion when you only have observational data. On the other hand, with experiments, you can make cause and effect conclusions, but a lot of times it's difficult to do proper experiments. Okay, that's that. So there's when you're doing experiments, there's all sorts of terms that we've kind of thrown around. I'll just throw on the board here. Experiments, and all of this is covered in detail in your book when you do your reading as well. Okay, so we have things like blinding, which is people don't know which treatment they are receiving. If you hear double blind, it means the researcher doesn't know which treatment is being used either. Okay? So double blind means both the person receiving it and the researcher, neither of them know which treatment's being used, and only an uninvolved third party has the records to keep track of everything, to know who's getting which treatment. Okay? So this goes hand in hand with placebo. So when you use a placebo, you don't tell them, guess what, you're receiving the placebo and the other person's receiving the real drug. You just kind of say, all right, you take these pills, you don't know what they are, and we'll go with that. Okay. All right, more terms: double blind, animal bias. Okay. Yeah. All right. Okay, so that was that's experiments, and then as I said earlier, for observational study, yes, we have a question.
Yeah, just a quick one about tests and material. For something, a case in point right here. So you're giving us some examples of some of the terms that we'll encounter in our reading. Mm-hmm. What should we expect for tests? How do you test us on the material? Is it really heavy based on the lecture, or is it, kind of like the lecture insinuates maybe what we should go into more depth in the reading? Because I know professors vary a lot, and it helps to know that.
I don't know. I think my tests are fair. I'll say that. I'm not. I'm not going to ask you what was the word on the 15th page or something. tests. I think if you understand the reading and you understand the lectures and you do the homework, you should be in good shape. I'm not sure what specifically you have in mind, so it's difficult for me to answer.
How much percentage of your lecture covers the quiz or exam? Yeah? Like everything you're saying is covered. The exam is going to be based on just what you're saying, or you have to do something extra.
So, what do you mean by extra?
His question, or their question, I think is more, are you gonna ask us to like define stuff or like regurgitate stuff you mentioned in class, or are we gonna do like a lot of problems?
More
for our
problems,
tests?
I would say,
Okay.
but definitely you need to know some conceptual terms, I guess. I'm not going to have like a vocabulary test, okay? There's no vocabulary
Yeah,
test, and you don't have to regurgitate things exactly as I say them. A lot of my things are short answer or multiple choice. But at the same time, maybe I would give you an example. I would say, in some study, the researchers wanted to know if a new drug would be effective. So to, I don't know, some skin cream would be effective. So what they did was they didn't tell, they created two versions of the skin cream, one with the active ingredient and one that did not have the active ingredient. They gave it to patients, they told it to rub on their face, and then they had a dermatologist examine the face to see if the patient showed improvement. The dermatologists did not know which version of which skin cream the patient was using, but rather someone, research assistant was keeping track of who was receiving what. Is this an example of blinding, double blind, placebo? What, I don't know. And then, I guess I wouldn't throw that in there, but I would say, is this an example of experiment or observational study? Is this blind or double blind or no blinding involved? And you should be able to tell me this was an experiment and this was double blind. Okay? Does that seem fair, or?
Yeah, I mean, the only reason I asked, I wasn't trying to be pedantic, is there's a lot of reading in books and textbooks, and like, I mean, obviously I'm gonna read it, but memorizing a lot of these terms and facts sometimes can be overwhelming if there's,
Okay.
Forget it. We'll go on. Maybe I'll talk to you after. It's okay.
Yeah, I think it's a fair question. Yes.
I think the general question is, if it's not covered in lecture, but it's covered in the book, are we expected to know it? If you don't cover it in lecture, but it's in the book.
That's it. Yeah, that's what I'm asking.
Okay. If I assign a homework problem, then you're expected to know it. Okay. So maybe the homework problems will require you to do some reading. And then for the quizzes, I list off topics that you'll need to know. And I don't know. I personally think they're fair. I think most people say my exams are fair.
Okay.
And if you think they're not fair, you let me know and we'll talk about it. Yes.
Do you ever take like a quick question and just change the numbers and put it on the quiz?
No, I don't do that.
No, because I took calculus and that's what it was like.
Oh, okay.
I just did problems.
I mean, the questions are similar to some of the, the question in the book covers whatever, some statistical concept, okay? It's hard to write another question that covers the same statistical concept without it looking similar to the book. And some people will say, oh, it was just like the book problem, and other people will say it was nothing like the book problem. So I don't, students have different opinions on what's similar and what's not similar, and what's fair and what's not fair. But I'm not out to get you guys, okay? I have a job to make sure that you understood what these statistical topics are, okay? And so I have to write a test and quiz that kind of make sure that you understand it. And I try not to be like nitpicky about did I use this or that. Some topics, some phrasing things I get a little nitpicky about, but those are actually important. Yes? Is that, no, not a question. Okay. Well, we'll see. All right, we'll have a quiz, and you tell me, nah, that was not good or something. I don't know. All right, so when we came to observational studies, we talked about making sure that the sample is representative of the population that you're interested in. Okay. So let's talk about sampling. So sampling, and this also applies to experiments, but you'll see in experiments, not as much energy is devoted to the sampling part for whatever reason. Sampling is important, but a lot of times for experiments, it's just hard to set up an experiment where you have a truly random sample, and then they volunteer to participate in an experiment. So in real life, sampling is difficult to do with experiments, but ideally we could. So sampling, this is it's all about trying to get a sample that is representative of a population. Okay, so we cannot study everybody, right? We cannot study everyone. There's too many people. We cannot be done. And so instead of studying everyone, we settle on maybe we study 100 people or 1,000 people rather than everyone. Instead, we study a sample, okay? And so a sample is maybe 100 or 1,000 or basically a smaller selection that we hope is representative of the population. Ideally, any conclusions that we can say about the sample can then be generalized to the population as a whole. So the picture that you see is this thing represents a population. So it could be, when we say population, it could just be anything. So it could be everybody in the United States. It could be everybody in the world. It could be people in the 29 to 49 demographic. It could be all adult voters in California, whatever it wants, okay, whatever thing you're interested in is the population. We cannot study the population directly, so we draw a sample. And then we're hoping that anything that we conclude about the sample can thus be generalized to the population. So going into the election, maybe we don't know exactly how, what's a toss-up state? Iowa, yes, Iowa. Okay, so in Iowa, we're not entirely sure who's going to win Iowa. Okay, and so they go around Iowa and they ask, who are you going to vote for? All right, and maybe they ask 1,000 people, and based on the 1,000 people, 49% say Romney and 51% say Obama, And so from this, can they then generalize that the entire state of Iowa is gonna go 51%, 49%? Yes, no, okay. There's that would be our best guess at this point, but we'll talk about like the margin of error and things like that. And so maybe when you include the margin of error, then it's inconclusive. You say, okay, well, Mr. Obama is likely to win between 48 and 53% of Iowa. Okay, what does that mean? Okay, well, that means he could lose or he could win Iowa. If he takes 53, that's a win. If he takes 48, that's a loss. Okay, assuming there's only the two candidates people will vote for. So. But on other hands, you know, if you went around California and you said, who are you going to vote for, you're going to get something like 59% will say Obama, and 41% will say Romney. And from there, you can generalize and you can say, okay, well, Mr. Obama is likely to win between 56 and 63% of California's popular vote, which means it's pretty safe to say that Obama will win California. So that's something that happens in sampling. Okay. Now, the best way, or the simplest and most ideal way to take a sample, is known as simple random sampling. Simple random sampling is the simplest way, but it's actually very difficult to pull off in real life. Okay, what simple random sampling involves, it requires to have a list of every single person or every single item in the population. Okay, so it requires a list of everyone. And from that list, you randomly select individuals to be part of the sample. Okay. So this would be, it could be as simple as, you know, we just have everybody write their name on a piece of paper. We throw all of your names in a hat, and we mix it up, and we just draw names out of the hat. Okay, as long as we did the mixing up process pretty well, we'd be in good shape. Or, you know, we assign you all numbers, and we put all the numbers in like a bingo wheel, and or bingo, whatever that roller thing is, and we draw out numbers, and people are selected. Okay. Pretty much random selection is usually done with a computer using some random algorithms, and that's fine. It's not this part. The random selection is usually not the hard part. Okay. The hard part is getting a list of everyone in the population. Okay. So if I told you try to create a random sample of people in Los Angeles County, you would not be able to do it. Okay. How would you get a random list of everyone in Los Angeles County? It can't be done. Okay. Maybe you go to the phone book and you're thinking, okay, well, this is the closest thing I can get, but I would venture and guess that a lot of you aren't listed in the phone book, and so any kind of random sample that we do with a phone book will have no chance of selecting any of you. Okay. Or anyone who's not listed in the phone book. Okay. Maybe you can, I don't know, go to the DMV and ask, you know, can I get a list of everyone whose address is in LA County, and they would probably not give you that information, but let's say they did, and you would still not get everyone because not everyone has an address, you know, or is not registered with the DMV. There's people who have moved here that haven't updated their address, and so getting a list of everyone in the population is actually very difficult to do. Okay, we can do probably simple random sampling. The largest that we can do is probably, you know, students at UCLA. All right, at least all the students will be, will have some kind of record at the registrar's office. Okay. And, so maybe we could do that, but you know, unless you live in a country where they, I don't know, where they have they register everybody's name in some national registry or something, it'll be difficult. Okay, yeah, even the IRS, and you look up everybody's social security number, you're still going to miss people. That might be the closest we can get at this point, but without fears of inducing some kind of Big Brother scenario, true simple random sampling at anything larger than some kind of institution is really hard to do. And so, and I guess, you know, one of the weaknesses of all the statistical tools we're going to learn is one of the inherent assumptions of all these statistical tests is that simple random sampling has occurred. Okay, that the data that we're looking at is a result of simple random sampling. A lot of the tests assume that, and so sometimes when you look at these tests and you try to apply them, you know, in your workplace or things like that, you have to do things with just with a grain of salt, knowing that maybe the data you have was not collected via simple random sample, and so maybe the conclusions that you make are not going to be as strong as they would be had they been had your data been gathered via simple random sampling. Okay, so requires a list of everyone in the population. Oh, that list is known as the sampling frame. The list of everyone. And the integrity of the sample depends on the sampling frame. If the sampling frame is no good, your sample is going to be no good. That was like, for example, Literary Digest back in the Depression era. They conducted a survey, and they said, who are you going to vote for? And it showed that FDR was going to lose by wide margins, but then it turned out FDR won by huge margins, and the reason was that they used the phone book, and at that time the phone was a luxury item and only rich people had phones, and so they only had the opinions of people who own telephones, and so they missed the 47%, I guess. And so, okay, so but because simple random sampling is difficult, we have other methods that we take, and these are, I guess, our best attempts at getting something similar to a simple random sample, but they're not simple random samples. So we have cluster sampling. And we also have stratified sampling. Okay, cluster sampling is cluster sampling divides the population into subgroups, and each subgroup is potentially representative of the population. Okay, Each. And the way cluster sampling works is we have a list of all the subgroups, okay? They're called clusters. We have a list of all the clusters. We randomly select some of the clusters, and then we survey or study everyone within that cluster. Select some of the clusters, and then survey or study. Each cluster. Okay, the subgroups are clusters in this one. So an example could be maybe if you wanted to survey the state of Iowa, instead of trying to get a list of everyone in Iowa, you get a list of all the Iowa counties, okay? And there's like 60 counties in Iowa, or I don't know, there's a lot. It's like California only has a few. All the other states, they have a lot of counties. And then you randomly select a few of the counties, and then you try to get everybody within each county. And again, getting everybody might be a challenge, but within each county might be a challenge in of itself. But you don't have to worry about generating the sampling frame with everyone in the entire state. So you just you get a list of all the counties, and then you survey everyone in each county. Or another example would be maybe you wanted to do a study of all people who attend a Catholic church in Los Angeles County or something like that. Okay. So if you wanted to do simple random sampling, what it would require is you get a list of everyone who attends a Catholic church, which would be very difficult to do. Cluster sampling instead would say, all right, well, don't try to get a list of every individual, but just try to get a list of all the churches, all the Catholic churches in LA. And then once you get that list of churches, then you randomly select some of the churches, and then you go to each church and you ask, try to survey everyone within the church, which would be easier to do. Okay, it's not going to be truly random. It's not going to be a simple random sample, but it's a decent approximation. Stratified sampling, on the other hand, we also have the population divided into subgroups. Okay? But the way the subgroups work here is different. Okay, so the population. Okay, but the subgroups. The members of each subgroup have something in common. Okay, there's something homogeneous about each subgroup. Okay, so for example, we could divide the population into two subgroups, all the men and all the women. Okay, and so each subgroup is homogeneous in a sense that they all share the same gender. Or we could, or the population could be divided by ethnicity, or it could be divided by any other trait that makes it homogeneous. Okay, age group. Okay, under 20 to 30 or whatever, 69 or whatever. Those are those could be your subgroups. And so what you do here is that to create a sample, randomly select members from each strata so that the resulting sample has the correct proportions of each strata. Okay, so if the population is whatever 30% people under the age of 25, then in your sample you want to make sure that 30% of your sample are people under 25. Okay, and so that's stratified sampling. People get a lot of these times them mixed up because they're both divided into subgroups, but the way the subgroups work are different. Yes.
Will you run into problems because in the first place you have to figure out how many people are in the population, and to do that you would need whatever that's called the sampling frame?
So we would run into problems where?
Trying to get that initial list of, let's say.
Oh, the sampling frame?
Yeah.
So the simple random sample is difficult because creating the sampling frame is hard. Okay, and so cluster sampling and stratified sampling, these are alternatives, other methods where it doesn't require the sampling frame. It doesn't require every single person, but they're not going to give you a truly simple random sample. Okay. All right. Let's take a little break there. We'll come back in like 10 minutes, and we'll finish off our